So check it out. This is what we would refer to as a 6-beat fountain. And this is what we would refer to as a 4-beat fountain. 6 beats, 4 beats. What's the difference? Is it just splitting hairs, or is there actually something here that would be good for people in the poi world to know? That is the question I got on a recent short that I posted, so I am now expanding the subject into its own video. Drex here from Drex Factor Poi, sharing with you the love of poi spinning and flow arts to benefit your body and brain. And today, we're diving into the differences between 6 and 4-beat fountains. And we're going to discover some other cool things along the way, too. But before we dive in, I just want to give a quick shout out to the friends of the channel. Big thanks to Dark Monk, Fire Mecha, Flow Fests, Flow Toys, Pyroterra Light Toys, and Ultra Poi for helping to make the videos on this channel possible. You can learn more about all these awesome companies and the work they're doing to support flow artists like yourself by checking out the links down in the description of this video. And special thanks to the non-business friend of the channel, Pekka Pekkonen. Thank you so much for supporting my channel, my work, and my mission. Okay, so first we have to talk a little bit about what a fountain even is. And when we refer to a fountain, I think what we're really doing is we're giving shorthand to any of a type of poi trick that involve a level change that takes us out of the world of just taking a weave back and forth across our bodies in a waist strap like this and bringing some element of it up around our shoulders, whether that element happens to go behind our shoulders or it doesn't. Both seem to register as something that we think of with that label fountain. But what actually winds up being the difference between the different approaches to doing that? Now let's take a look at what I believe was the first fountain that was ever identified, which is based upon a waist strap. That is, taking just a weave back and forth between the reverse and forwards, turning it across our body like so. And if I take one hand and poi out of it, you'll see that the motion of just doing this with one hand, I wind up doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 downbeats with just one poi. And of course, both poi are doing this at the same time as we're going. I always have my forwards weave on my right and my reverse weave on my left. Well, not always, but it's the way I'm most comfortable doing it. Now you'll notice that as I'm taking that weave back and forth across my body, my hands are basically traveling in a straight line that is about even with the bottom of my rib cage. That's pretty common for most folks. But the thing is, that line doesn't have to stay a straight line. In fact, when I'm going from my forwards weave to my reverse weave, I can, instead of taking it across the line of my rib cage, take it down and around past my hips. It's only a minor tweak. And then when I take it back over to the forwards weave on my stage right, I take it up and over past my face, down and around past my hips, up and over past my face. It's funny, but watching the old tutorials and demonstrations on Home of Poi, I remember seeing the video of the fountain and not being at all clear of what was going on there. Just having like some awareness of the fact that it was basically a waist strap, but that there was a level change involved, taking it both down low as well as up high. And really what this does is it turns the waist strap into something approximating a flower, where now we have the poi and hands both moving around in a circle. So I want to point something out here right quick because it will become important for things we discuss later on. And that is that if we look at this move from the side, you'll note that in all of those spots where I'm taking my hands and poi either up and over or down and under, both my hands and my poi are in front of me at all times. The only times when the poi cross around back past the plane of my shoulders is when they're on either side of that weave/fountain. And this is actually really important and really useful because it means that when going across the middle section there, I am not actually beholden to making sure that I always make the same choice. So here's what I mean by that. As I'm performing my forwards weave over here on stage right and taking it over to my reverse weave on stage left, the convention that I've adopted is that I'm going to take my hands down and around. But because my hands and poi are always in front of me as I'm doing that, I don't have to take it down and around. Instead, I could take it up and over, make a different choice. But really, it's that same waist strap we played around with to start with. I'm just reversing my choices here so that I wind up taking that fountain around in an anti-spin direction. And likewise, when I'm coming from my reverse weave to my forwards weave, like so, I can choose to, instead of taking it up and over, I can instead choose to take it down and around. So long as my hands and poi are always in front of me in that middle section, I have the option of choosing whether I go up or whether I go down, and I can change that choice any old time I want. It makes it really easy to switch back and forth between these different ways of performing the fountain, in-spin and anti-spin. And because this fountain is based on performing a waist strap, and as we discussed earlier, there are 6 beats in the waist strap, this likewise we would refer to as a 6-beat fountain. Again, count them as we go along here. Following the orange poi, I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 beats as I take the poi all the way around here. And of course, the yellow poi is doing the exact same thing, just slightly displaced a little bit in space, but it's the same number of beats. But of course, the first fountain that I actually learned as a poi spinner is something that I didn't think of as a fountain at all when I first learned it. And that was the 4-beat fountain. Because in my mind, what this actually was taking a waist strap and then transitioning into a windmill up top. In fact, I thought of this as being the first transition that I ever learned how to do with poi, and I was very proud of myself for learning how to do it. For the first time, each of those individual tricks didn't just sit alone in their own boxes. They were things that could be attached to each other and things that you could move back and forth between. But of course, when you move continuously through this pattern, you wind up with something that does discreetly look like its own trick. And I got into the habit of referring to it as a 4-beat fountain from Nick Woolsey. He was the first person that I saw refer to it in that fashion. But just like we did with our 6-beat fountain, we can very easily see how we get 1, 2, 3, 4 beats, 1, 2, 3, 4 beats as we go around with each hand. Needless to say, there are some differences between this and the 6-beat fountain, but the biggest difference is not that we dropped 2 beats. The biggest difference is that we've kind of fundamentally changed the structure of the fountain. Now, remember when I was playing around with the 6-beat fountain here, how we have these sections where we're going across from the forwards to the reverse weave when both our hands and our poi are out in front of us. When we switch over to doing a 4-beat fountain, all of a sudden the top part of that disappears. And now, when we're going across the top, we are dropping both poi and hands behind our shoulders as we go over top. So 6-beat fountain, my hands and poi are in front of me. 4-beat fountain, they go behind my shoulders and my head as I'm going across the top part of it here. Now, it creates a really distinctive and interesting looking pattern, of course, where I seem to be constantly having the poi swirl around me like so. And I think one thing I really love doing actually is making the transition from 6-beat fountain down to 4-beat fountain, because I feel like it adds some excitement to it. And then of course I can go down to a windmill, and I've come to a place where I've just built up a moment of tension that I can then release by finishing with something like a spiral wrap. But there are also some other important properties of 4-beat fountains that we should dive into as well. So 4-beat fountains have long been kind of challenging for me to wrap my mind around, because I really think that they kind of behave like almost a mutated version of a fountain, a couple other things that are all slapped together. And that means that they don't behave like any one kind of poi trick. They have qualities of multiple different poi tricks all kind of slapped together. And one of the biggest differences is just like right from the drop. Now, there's actually no place in this move where you drop fully into a 3-beat weave. When you're over on the forward side, on your left here, you're doing a 2-beat with your right hand on top, going forwards, and then you swap to a 2-beat with your right hand on bottom, your left hand on top, over here on the left side with the poi going reverse, and then you pop up into the windmill. So when I come back over onto my forward side, my left hand automatically goes under my right. There is never a point where I go over and then under in order to get here. I'm only doing under and then back out, under and then back out, and windmill. So fundamentally, the structure is very, very different than a 6-beat fountain. And in fact, Ivan Melgorbanov, the very famous Russian spinner, has a completely different way of thinking about this. He actually thinks of these 4-beat fountains as being a version of a 4-beat windmill above the head that we're just displacing elements of from side to side. And I see where he's coming from on this because, yes, there are elements of it that, like, geometrically work out to be the same. You can see that if we just focus on where the hands wind up as we're going back and forth with this, then, yes, of course, the pattern is almost identical to a 4-beat fountain. I'm not sure that I find this framing of it helpful for my own spinning, if for no other reason than I don't think it makes it easier to learn, and I don't really get the gist from it that it connects together several other dots, but you might find that formulation useful for yourself, so I'm putting it in here nonetheless. And of course, one of the biggest and probably the most obnoxious byproducts of having to work with a 4-beat fountain in the same way that we think of a 6-beat fountain is that the 6-beat fountains leave us an easy way to switch back and forth between anti-spin and in-spin, because once again, in those spots where we're going down and around or up and over, the hands and poi are always in front of us. So we have the option of switching back and forth quite easily. That's not true in 4-beat fountains because we have the top part that goes around our head like so. We have to make some really specific choices about what we're going to consider fair game if we try and take this into an anti-spin direction. So, like, to me, I consider the most important elements of this being that we have moments on bottom where we have the left hand go behind, the right hand go behind, and then when we go up top, left behind, right behind. So the hands alternate which one go behind at any given time. And of course, we still have to do the thing where we have the poi go around our heads, like so. This is kind of how I have been performing it, but I don't think that it's necessarily a perfect conversion. In talking with Mel about his interpretation of 4-beat fountains, he certainly thinks that it's just frankly impossible to do an anti-spin 4-beat fountain. And given the lens that he's looking at it through, I would agree. Certainly the elements that he considers to be valid for putting together a 4-beat fountain completely forbid the possibility of doing it anti-spin because it would mean our hands would have to go through our bodies in order to attain it. Or, of course, we could do some weird, like, inverted version of it that goes through the hands, but I don't have arms flexible enough to do that, unfortunately. Okay, so I'm going to throw one more curveball at you, and that is to tell you that there's actually another 4-beat fountain. And this one actually does have an easy anti-spin variation. And if you play around with meteors, you've probably already done it. See, we do a thing when we play around with meteor where we have a weave with the 2 poi spinning around in one hand, like so. Now the thing is, I'm always leading this meteor weave with my thumb end. It is always my orange poi that goes back and forth. And I could just as easily think of this as being a 2-beat weave where I always have my right hand poi leading, going back and forth, like so. Now the thing is, we do have a version of the waist trap and of course the fountain that we can do with our hands in a 2 poi 1 hand kind of situation where we're going back and forth between 2-beat weaves. The way we do it is we go from having our kind of thumb-led version over here on the right to a pinky-led version over here on the left. And going back and forth between them. We have to perform a little linear isolation to get back and forth, like so. But this is basically 2 2-beat weaves that are stuck together, and you can count the beats with me here. The red one, or I should say the orange one, goes around 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 times. 4-beat weave. So if we do this with both hands, we wind up in a place where this becomes our waist strap with these 2-beat weaves, switching back and forth between a right hand lead weave and a left hand lead weave. And guess what? If we want to, we can also turn this into a fountain, both an in-spin as well as an anti-spin fountain, like so. Now, you may be asking yourself, what makes this fountain markedly different from the other 4-beat fountain that we have been looking at so far? And aside from the fact that it does the same thing that our 6-beat fountain does, where we have the moments when the poi are going from side to side, always in front of us rather than behind us, allowing us to make an easy switch between anti-spin and in-spin. But also, too, there's a very, very subtle shift between this version of a 4-beat fountain and this version of a 4-beat fountain. Namely, there's a little moment when I'm going across the bottom here in the 4-beat fountain, namely the version that is similar to the 6-beat, where I can easily switch back and forth between in-spin and anti-spin, where I have to like kind of pop one poi out of the way for a second to allow the other one to lead. And that doesn't happen in the other version. In the other version, I'm basically making it so that the right-hand poi leads all the way over to the other side. It's acting like it wants to become a 3-beat weave over here on my left side, but I'm just simply not allowing it. Instead of completing that, I'm popping up into that windmill to complete my 4-beat fountain here. So to me, that says that we have 2 different 4-beat fountains, one of which actually works very, very close to the 6-beat fountain, and one of which seems to be this kind of Frankenstein of different elements that are all stuck together. And could very well be a variation on a 4-beat windmill if we want to take a look at it that way. So where does that leave us with our breakdown of fountains? Well, I think then of there being basically 2 categories of fountains. One that I refer to as the true fountains, and the other one that I refer to as the false or the pseudo fountains. The true fountains are all based in weaves, and specifically in waist straps. And those waist straps have to be symmetrical. That is, as I'm performing my 6-beat waist strap right here, going back and forth between 3-beat weaves, I'm always doing so in a fashion where both the poi and my hands are in front of me as I'm going across the middle. This allows me to take the motion around either in-spin or anti-spin very, very easily. And likewise, I have access to a 4-beat waist strap that is 2-beat weaves stuck together like so. That likewise, anytime I'm going across the middle section here, I can take it around either anti-spin or I can take it around in-spin. In fact, I would say that the capacity to be able to easily switch back and forth between in-spin and anti-spin is a diagnostic characteristic of these true fountains. Should also be said, we also have this option when we're playing around with 5-beat weaves going back and forth across our bodies like so. Once again, we can take the bottom part and we can take the top part, and we can do them both in-spin and anti-spin because they have the middle section going across the front of us. And then there are the false or pseudo fountains, and the 4-beat fountain definitely fits into that category for me. A, because it is very, very difficult, if not impossible, to take it back anti-spin, and also 2, because it is not a move wherein we have a clean weave on either side of our body. We're not just constructing it completely out of weaves. There's something else that happens across the top. And whether you want to think of it as a false fountain or a variation on the 4-beat windmill, hey, I'm not here to judge you. But it does make me curious if there are other false fountains out there. So maybe you can find some examples. I haven't found a lot just yet, but I also haven't done a lot of looking just yet either. So maybe you can beat me there. Either way, this is a fun topic to explore. I hope you enjoyed going down the rabbit hole with me today. Thanks to Poi Peter for requesting this video and giving me an opportunity to wax a little nerdy about poi fountains. Did you get anything out of this video? Please make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Keep the conversation going and help my channel grow. Thanks a lot. This video and all the videos on my channel would not be possible without my amazing supporters on Patreon. In particular, I'd love to give a shout out to my Flow patrons who are listed on screen right now. Thank you all so much, you rock. And if you out there watching are not currently a supporter, but you like the content that I create, you like seeing videos about poi spinning and flow arts, and you'd like to see more of them, the best way that you can ensure that that's going to happen is to sign up to support the work that I do over on Patreon, specifically at patreon.com/DrexFactorPoi. There you can get access to some amazing rewards, but even better than that, you'll be helping me out in my mission to bring poi spinning and flow arts to the whole wide world. So go check that out, please and thank you. And if you'd like to learn more about fountains, you can check out this video right here that I did on fountains a little while back. This is a topic that I've explored several times on this channel, and it's a really fun one, I have to say. I'll go ahead and link to it up on screen as well as down in the description. Thank you all so much for watching. Make sure to get out and flow today, and I'll see you with a new video very, very soon. Take care now. Peace.